So, on my way back from church today, I was thinking about 7 wealth destroyers that we should all avoid at all costs. Number one, lifestyle inflation. Now, what is lifestyle inflation? If you think about how most people build wealth, and I'm not talking about those who are from wealthy families, for example, or those who have a lovely, handsome inheritance waiting for them. I'm talking about normal folks like you and I. If you think about how these individuals build wealth, it has a lot to do with discipline as well as cost minimization. If you keep increasing your expenses as your income increases, it essentially means that you're not making progress financially because you have essentially spent the higher income or the excess income that you've received on higher expenses. So there's no difference between where you were yesterday and where you are today. So when you get that raise in your salary or you get a nice hefty bonus, don't go out there spending it on things like a new Rolex watch or a new car or a new gadget or the latest thing in fashion. Here's a side story. During the pandemic, when the government was giving out these grants and loans to businesses and individuals who were set up as businesses, I heard about individuals who were taking £50,000 in these bounce back loans, as they were called. That's the equivalent of $65,000. And they were blowing it on Rolex watches. I understand to some individuals that seemed like free or cheap money, but in my humble opinion, that is insanity. Number two, expensive friends and family members. I think this one kind of speaks for itself. We all have one. The party starts when they arrive. They're about to jet off to the south of France to spend 3 days on a yacht with royalty. After that, they're off to Singapore for one night. Friends and family members can be so much fun, but make sure to control how much influence or impact they have on your finances. And they might actually be in different financial situations than you are. They might be high income earners, they might be from wealthy families, or they're just really bad with money. Regardless of which group they fall into, you know who they are. So I think it's sensible to limit the amount of time and money you spend when you're around them. Number three, relationships. Now, I promise you, I'm not a bitter lady who is against happiness. Relationships can be fantastic, and the right relationship can actually bring you a lot of happiness and better financial well-being. I'm talking about getting into a relationship or being in a relationship with an individual who has the polar opposite of the goal of building wealth that you do. Someone who wants to live in the moment, spend freely, and not worry about the future. Unfortunately, this individual is more likely than not to hold you back financially. Leading on nicely from that point, number four, divorce. Now, there isn't much you can do if the situation you find yourself calls for a necessary divorce. I think this point is just one to be aware of. I work with professionals who help those in their 40s and their 50s work through divorces. And that might be in a legal capacity or in financial matters. What you see is that a lot of these individuals are like college graduates in the sense that they are literally having to start from scratch after a very, very difficult divorce. Now, here's a side story which is very heartbreaking. I personally knew an individual who was quite wealthy and he had to go through a divorce. Now, he had bought a property in a very lovely area of London, which cost around £1.2 million. And when he was purchasing the property, he had taken out a high interest loan for about £700,000. Now, in the divorce settlement, the ruling had been given that he had to split the equity or the worth of the house with his wife. Now, the equity had grown very nicely over time, but unfortunately, he alone was left to carry the debt on that property. So what that meant was that if he wanted to keep the house, he had to find hundreds of thousands of pounds to give her her portion of the property's worth. He was left with all of the debt. And it led to a very difficult and challenging spiral. But the reason I mention this is to say that divorces can really be a wealth destroyer. And if we consider the statistics, 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce, whereas second marriages are even worse, 60 to 70%. Apart from the emotional devastation that divorce can cause, it is also extremely expensive and can be a huge wealth destroyer. The instant gratification trap. Bear in mind that for most people, their wealth will actually be built from the opposite of this, i.e., delayed gratification. Unfortunately, as the generations progress, as we move into newer generations, it seems that we are stuck on this high-speed train towards the consequences of instant gratification. This notion of dooms spending. Live whilst you're young, enjoy, don't worry about the future, it will take care of itself. This trend or this perspectival notion will undoubtedly do a lot of harm to people's future. Now, here's the thing. The future will come, and it will come faster than you expect. So you don't want to be that 40-year-old or 50-year-old without assets. Number 6, interests. Specifically, interests on debt. Now, compounding is one of the most powerful phenomenons in the world of investing. A small amount invested in the right way, compounded over a long period of time, can become millions. Unfortunately, the same is true for the opposite, i.e., paying interest on debt we owe. And what that means is our monies are essentially compounding or have the compounding effect for someone else, i.e., our creditors. So the monies we could have deployed or allocated to savings accounts or investments are instead being used to service liabilities or debt. And the worst part is, in many situations, we have just enough to cover the interest, not even the repayment on the loan. That debt remains constant over a longer period of time, and we keep using our hard-earned monies to service liabilities when we could be deploying those towards building a nice nest egg. And regardless of what people say, the reality is that it is very difficult to build wealth when you have a lot of debt to pay off. So do not let debt be your wealth destroyer. Number 7, overpaying on taxes. Now, I've said this a few times on this channel. One of the things that wealthy people have mastered, or at least they hire people who have mastered it, is tax avoidance. They are so good at legally avoiding tax. And this is directly tied into financial education. And lately, I've been seeing a few videos on YouTubers who seemingly had it all. They were earning six-figure sums from their side hustles or from YouTube or their businesses. They were mostly entrepreneurs, but they seem to have lost it all. And now they're back to a 9-to-5 job. And the one golden thread across all of their narratives is that they weren't smart with their money. They weren't financially savvy. They were paying tons and tons in taxes. And sometimes they were being penalized for delayed payments. So they had a lot of back taxes, but they were spending the income they were receiving and had no assets. Sorry, my camera died there. Make sure that your employers are employing the right tax codes to your earnings. Use tax protective accounts, high yielding accounts, tax deductions that you might get from being part of a professional body. Whatever you have to do to reduce your taxes, go ahead and maximize these. Now, some of us might be lazy and we might think, oh, it's too complicated or it's for rich people, etc. It really comes down to how much you value your time, because you sell your time for income from your employers. And if there's a chance that you can reduce the taxation you pay on that, why not? And I bet you that you have someone who is within 3 degrees of separation from yourself that can help you explain the basics of taxes and how this might apply to helping you reduce your tax. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, do not forget to subscribe. Click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my new videos. Until next time, look after yourself. Bye for now.